I'm rolling.
Audio's rolling.
This is Nachman, Toronto. Iris, scene 1, scene 3, take 1.
Can you clap lower?
Yep, oh, sorry.
There you go.
All right, second sticks for Iris.
Okay. So here's my first question: is how comfortable are you going to be in giving me a little bit of the history stuff and some of these points on here? And you don't need to have them memorized. We can also.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna use you and Dror for a lot of these, factual points, and I don't mind, giving it to you and then you giving it back. That doesn't bother me. But are you okay with
Yeah,
stuff
sure.
like that?
To the best that I know, I'll
Okay,
tell you what I'm.
good. Your aunt was fabulous. She was
Yeah,
really,
Yali's great,
She was
yeah.
really, really terrific. Okay, so let's start talking about your father's childhood. Tell me about what you know of his nuclear family. So tell me a little bit about that. He has his older sister, and there was him, and then there was the two younger sisters. Tell me about that and where they grew up and where they lived.
So my grandfather came over before World War II. He was a Zionist in Poland, which was from a Hasidic family, which already was different. But he came over in 1935 to Israel. My Aunt Miriam, I believe, is 4 or 6 years older than my father. I can't remember.
6.
6 years older than my father.
Say it one more time.
So my Aunt Miriam was 6 years
One
older.
more time.
My Aunt Miriam, 6 years older than my father. And then my father was born in 43, February 16th. And then came Yali 4 years later, and then Nili 4 years later.
And where did they grow up and where did they live?
So they lived in an apartment in Tel Aviv. And I know my father mentioned it was small, which is why he likes space now. And I don't know much about the childhood before he went away to school. He always talked about how he was sent away to school or for high school. And my grandmother was crying and she really didn't want him to go, but it was a great opportunity, so he ended up going.
So tell me a little
yeah.
bit about there was a little bit of talk about the difference between him going off to a yeshiva versus a religious school. Tell me about what you know about that.
Sure, there were two types of public schools at the time. It was just regular public school and religious public school. And then a different level would be a yeshiva high school, I guess. So he said all his friends, he went to religious public school. And then when it came to this time to decide about high school, there was a discussion whether he should go to religious public high school or go to yeshiva high school. And there was an uncle, a distant uncle, who I think he's in touch with that family still today, who influenced my grandfather, said he's so bright, he should go to the best school you can get him into. And he was accepted to this yeshiva high school called Midrashia, which was one of the best high schools then. And I think my father told me a lot of politicians and big, dignitaries, their children graduated from there, or they graduated from there. And I think he really liked it. He enjoyed it. I think his nickname there was the Encyclopedia, as far as I remember.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. What any other stories that you remember that he told you about his high school time before he?
I know that my uncle Eliezer and him were in Gan together in kindergarten, and they were best friends. And then they separated when he went to high school, and then Eliezer came to Midrashia for the last 2 years of high school, so they were together again. And then he eventually introduced him to my mother. So.
Great.
Yeah.
What do you know about your father's journey post high school?
So post high school, he told me that there was an option to continue. He had a Rebbe in Midrashia who had an influence on him, and he went while he was in high school I think it was towards the end of high school. He went for a few months to do some learning, higher level learning, and that he said always had a big influence on him later in life. And so he was debating whether to do some more learning after for 2 or 3 years or go to medical school. And he said he always wanted to go to medical school. That was always his goal, so he decided to pursue that. And then the question was, should he go to the Army or go to medical school first and see if he can do that before going to the Army? But that was very difficult to do. You had to take a test for the medical school and a separate test to get the permission to defer the Army, both of which he passed. So, and then to get into medical school, there were 60 spots for about 1,000 applicants. There was one medical school in the entire country. And so that was another hurdle, which he passed again and was accepted. They reserved 15 of those 60 spots for Army, the Army deferral program. So he ended up doing 6 years of, he said it was combined undergraduate and medical school together. And then after those 6 years, he did 3 years in the Army as a doctor. Yeah.
So how does his story compare to your story? Your story?
Just a little different.
No, I mean, how does his story
yeah.
about going to medical school and all that? Is this something that you can relate to?
I think his hurdles were a bit harder than mine, but sure. I mean, all the hard work that goes into it and the tests that you have to pass and the application process, and I can't imagine having to deal with the Army after that as well. But he always loved being a doctor. Like, he was always so happy with it, and my mother managed his office and they both loved it. So I got a very, very positive impression about medicine in general, and I always loved science, so it was just natural for me to kind of follow in his footsteps.
Did you feel pressure?
No. Apparently, my best friend at the time, Shari, you know her, her mother told my father when I graduated plastic surgery residency, she said, when Iris was 3 years old, she was playing with Shari, and I asked her, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I want to be a plastic surgeon like my father. So I guess it's just, I don't know. And also Dror followed his footsteps into medicine as well. So he was a great role model, still is.
Good.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you know about why your parents moved out of Israel to the U.S.
My father was debating, what type of specialty he wanted to do. I think at one point he really decided plastic surgery is what he wanted. The only program they had in Israel was kind of a burn specialty program, but they didn't have a full plastic surgery residency there. So he had to look elsewhere, and he was accepted to Albert Einstein plastic surgery residency. So that's how he ended up in New York. And I think they originally thought they were going to move back to Israel, but once they reached New York, he opened up a private practice, and they settled into the community and stayed. Yeah.
Do they ever talk about that decision to move to New York and to leave Israel?
Not so much as like they sat down and made a decision. It kind of, I think, just they were here, and the natural step was to open up a practice. I don't know what else went on behind that. I know my mother thought they were going to live in Israel. My father thought they were going to live in Israel, but I guess once they came to New York, they ended up staying. Yeah.
Do you think that your father's time in the Army, any stories that you've heard about, influenced the rest of his life in any way?
Honestly, he didn't really talk about stories in the Army. I've asked about it here and there, but he hasn't really got into much detail with me about it. So I don't know. I only know him as I know him way after that. So I don't know. I know there's one story that my parents told me actually recently. I hadn't heard this before, when my mother was visiting for the weekend, and there was an imminent attack, or there was under attack, and a helicopter had to rush in and take my mother out. I know he broke his arm at one point in the Army, but it wasn't fighting, it was playing basketball, I think. Luckily, no lasting damage from that.
All right, tell me a little bit about what you know of the story of your parents meeting each other.
From what I know, my mother was living in Toronto at the time. She has an aunt here, or had an aunt here, and her younger sister, by about a year and a half, was living in Israel and was engaged to Eliezer, my father's best friend from kindergarten. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I think there was someone here that wanted to marry my mother, but she was hesitating, she wasn't sure. And then she gets a call from Eliezer, you have to meet my friend Nachman, come to Israel, before you make any decisions, you have to meet Nachman. So she said, okay. So she went to Israel and they met, and after a few dates, my father said they decided to get married. And 6 months later, they got married.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great. Good. You're doing great.
I hope so. I'm very, like,
No, you're
yeah,
doing-
I'm
you're
not
doing
very good in front of a
absolutely-
camera.
Absolutely terrific. By the way, as a side note, just
Yeah.
so that this is for you, this is not for,
Yes.
for on camera. It was, let me see which one it was. It was Yali that said that she thinks that the stuff that he saw during the war and bandaging people up and fixing people up that made him want to go into plastic
plastic-
surgery to literally
So
fix.
she would know more about it than
I mean,
yeah.
I don't think it was.
He never mentioned
I
that
don't
to
think
me.
it was a direct.
Maybe
for sure.
like subconsciously.
Yeah.
He never mentioned that to me. I know he was considering orthopedic surgery at one point, but he leaned towards plastic surgery. He was accepted to both, I think.
All right, let's get a
Yeah.
little bit more about his life once he moved to the States.
Mm-hmm.
So he moved to the States. Dror was already born. Dror was born in Israel.
He was 1.5 when they moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me about where they moved in the States and what he did.
So they moved when he started his residency at Albert Einstein in the Bronx, and they lived in the housing there for about 6 months. I remember they said the smells from the food were horrible from the cooking there. Anyway, after about 6 months, they bought a house in Bayside. My father had 2 aunts. His father's 2 sisters who survived the war ended up in New York. And so he moved to that neighborhood in Bayside. That's where Dror grew up for 10 years. He has a lot of fond memories, which I'm sure he'll talk about. Anyway, so my father did his residency. It was 3 years of general surgery and 3 years of plastic surgery. The last 3 years, the hospitals has merged with Montefiore, so it was even bigger and very busy. And I think he worked for maybe 48 hours straight, and then he had 24 hours off, and then 48 hours, 20. It was very different then. But in those 24 hours, I know he spent a lot of time with my brother, so that was nice. By the time I came along when I was 1, he started his private practice, and he was even busier, so I didn't get that. He used to take him to the airport to watch the planes take off, things like that. I know my parents told stories. I mean, the income for a resident was very, very low, so they didn't have very much, and they used to go to an old department store called, I think it's called Alexander's, and for like 99 cents you can get a pack of 3 shirts and things like that. So that was the big treat on Sunday, went to Alexander's. I don't have much memories from Bayside because I was about 3 when they moved to Lawrence, and that was, I guess, around 1980 or so, thereabouts. So that's where I have more of the memories. But he started his private practice in 1977. And right away he opened up offices. He had Queens and Bayside, and then Manhattan, New Jersey, I think Brooklyn, as well as Woodmere. So they were very, and my mother managed the office. So they worked together since 1977.
How did,
Yeah.
how did he open so many offices? Was it right away, or did it?
I
slowly?
asked him that one. He said pretty much within a few months, they went for it, yeah.
Wow. You know,
And he
you
said
know-
very quickly he got very busy. He worked really hard. I remember sitting in many waiting rooms when we were out doing things, just waiting for him to finish sewing a laceration or treating a hand injury or whatever it was. He said, don't touch anything, everything's dirty, just sit here and wait.
Were there other
Yeah.
doctors that worked, or was it just him?
It was in the emergency room, so sure. I just
No, I'm saying
said,
in his practice.
oh, no, he was a solo
He was
practice.
solo. So
Oh,
all
he's-
those places
he-
he would run from one to the other.
yeah, in the beginning, I think as he got more established, and I don't remember how old I was, but he would know better, maybe like in the late 80s or 90s, he focused more on elective surgeries and didn't do so much of the emergency rooms anymore. But I never minded because I always thought I wanted to go watch him, but I wasn't allowed. So I said, someday I'll be in there. But yeah, he worked hard, but I never really kind of felt the absence because when he was home, he was really there, you know?
All right, so let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your childhood and him as a father. What was he like as a father?
He was really great. He had a really happy childhood. I wouldn't change one thing about it. They worked, like I said, they were busy, but when they were home, they were home, and always on the weekends and Shabbos. And he loved soccer, and he actually played on, I think, a semi-professional team or professional team in Israel. I think while he was in high school or medical school, he would know better. So in our backyard, there's like the house has a tennis court against this little house by the pool, and he would play soccer there, and he would teach me how to play, and then I would play goalie, and he would play goalie, and it was a lot of fun. And then we went swimming, and I don't know. And I remember one time I complained that we don't do enough, so he started taking me to the aquarium and the museums. He was great. He was really great. And then if I needed help with school, only he could help me. So if I wanted someone to test me, especially in high school when it was more serious, he could test me on it because I know he would never miss a detail. Yeah. There was one story that we once went to that aquarium, and I had a blankie, like a little blankie. One of his patients actually gave him when I was born. And in our backyard, there's like the house has a tennis court against this little house by the pool, and he would play soccer there, and he would teach me how to play, and then I would play goalie, and he would play goalie, and it was a lot of fun. And then we went swimming, and I don't know. And I remember one time I complained that we don't do enough, so he started taking me to the aquarium and the museums. He was great. He was really great. And then if I needed help with school, only he could help me. So if I wanted someone to test me, especially in high school when it was more serious, he could test me on it because I know he would never miss a detail. Yeah. There was one story that we once went to that aquarium, and I had a blankie, like a little blanket. One of his patients actually gave him when I was born, and it became my security blanket for many years. And we were at the aquarium, at the New York Aquarium in Brooklyn, and it just started pouring, lightning, thundering, and we made a run for the car. And I had the blankie in the car because I'd never left without it, and we were about to leave, and I noticed it was gone. So I was hysterical. I need my blankie. And my father's like, okay, it's pouring, it's raining, it's thundering, it's lightning. He runs out through the entire parking lot till he found the blankie. He brought it back, looked like a wet rag, but it took about 15 minutes for him to find it, but I was so relieved. So he was a good father.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Once they moved to the Five Towns,
Yeah.
did they move again in the Five Towns? Or
No, I've been in that house since I was 3. Yeah.
Do me a favor, give me that, I want that sentence clean. So give me that,
sorry.
once they moved to the Five Towns, that they've been in the house that they live in.
Once they moved to the 5 towns, they stayed in that house, and they still live in the same house today.
Okay, good. And you have fond memories of that house?
Yes. The first day we went there, I got lost. There's a back staircase, and I was exploring, and I didn't know where I was. I just sat there crying until someone found me. But after that, only fond memories.
Was there ever a question about him sending his kids to yeshiva? Was there any discussion about that? Do you know, was this something, that he believed in? Was it something that...
Yeah, his belief in, he has an unwavering belief in, Judaism and God, and that still is a source of strength for me. And there was never a doubt. Like, Dror and I both went to Haftar Yeshiva Day School, and we both went to Israel for a year to learn. I went to Michlala, Dror went to BMT, which happened to be next door to each other. Yeah, and still today, I have been through various things in my life where that's been tested to various degrees, and I've never wavered. And part of that is, my father's strength. He's always right. Anything you ask him, any question, whether it's knowledge or life-based anything, he's never wrong. And sometimes I think, no, he's not right. And then I see later on that he was right. He's always, so, when he has that strong belief, it gives me that strong belief,
Talking about beliefs for a second, is there any causes that are near and dear to him? Is there anything that he, outside of work, is there anything that you know, what would you say are some of his, you know, passions? Does he,
When you say cause in terms of like
anything you want to tell me about?
passions, I would definitely say soccer. He still watches all the games, and we went to the World Cup when they were in New York. I don't know how long ago it was though. And he likes his electronics. I mean, I don't think anyone has bigger TVs and computer screens that I've ever seen than him. And in terms of causes, I don't know any specific. I know he was a big supporter of the Young Israel of Lawrence Cedarhurst. When we moved, it was in the rabbi's house still. They built the new building, and I know he was very involved in that when they were younger. But I just know he's a very generous person, and he just never says no when anyone needs help. I think he's more low-key, and he doesn't talk about it. He's very modest, you know. But when somebody needs help, he just never says no. Whether it's for advice or financial or whatever it is, he's very quiet and modest, but, you know, you can always count on him.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. You got to see him with your grandparents, with his parents. Talk to me about that relationship.
I know his parents were amazing. My Savta, his mother, Sarah, just like a heart of gold, just hugs and kisses and love all the time. And that's, you know, there was a lot of, you know, it was a great relationship for everyone. We all loved her. And my grandfather, Pinchas, my father, I remember at my nephew Pinchas's bar mitzvah after my grandfather Pinchas had passed away, and my nephew was named after him. He gave a speech on Friday night, and he talked about how his father was his best friend, and he always turned to him for advice in life. Even till the week he died, he called him. He was in Israel. He called him every week. They had a standing time, and they would talk for a long time. And after he passed away, he always felt like something was missing. And then when my nephew Pinchas was born and they named him Pinchas, he felt like complete again. I think he was very, very close with his father. And, sorry. Dror and him are very close now. It's in a similar way. It's really, yeah. And so am I. I mean, when I finished my plastic surgery residency, I worked with my father for a few years. And honestly, it was my favorite time as a plastic surgeon with those few years. We operated together. After, if we finished early, he would come over to my house in Jamaica State, which was only about 10 minutes from where we operated. And Lily was a toddler then, so she would climb on his lap and we'd all have a late lunch together. And then we'd go off to do office hours that evening. And I did that until I moved to Canada. And yeah, I learned a lot about him, his taste in music, which I never knew he even had taste in music. And yeah, I think both my parents are very open and honest, and have very open, honest relationships with myself and my brother. So I feel like that's probably what he had growing up as well.
Would you say that family ranks on
Number one,
level?
yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll rephrase the question. Where does family rank for him?
I think family is the most important thing for him. His family and his religion, his work. I think he would do anything for his family. I know he's always been there for me. No matter what is happening, is just unwavering support, unconditional love and support from my whole life, no matter what. When I started my plastic surgery residency, and I was kind of panicking because they kind of throw you in the deep end. They don't give you any information, and you're on call. And of course, I was on call July 4th weekend, which is very bad for a plastic surgeon because people hold the fireworks in their hand, and boom, hand injury. And anything that came in, my father's like, just call me if you have any problems. So at 3 a.m, the first month or two, he was very happy to talk to me. He was always there. And then after the first couple of months, the calls kind of tapered off. He said, I know you're getting the hang of it because you're not calling me at 3 a.m. anymore. But he's always there. Yeah.
Tell me, if you have to, ask what traits you've learned from him that you are trying to pass on to your children, you know, more than anything else, what would you describe that as?
A lot. He's just kind, and he's there for you no matter what. And he has an amazing work ethic, and he doesn't complain about it. He just does what has to be done, and that's it. And he does it efficiently and quietly, but really, really well. And you know, that's how I tried to be, especially when I started, you know, my residency. And that's what I try to teach to my kids as well. And you know, since we moved to Canada, I made it a point to visit New York at least 4 or 5 times a year. So they, you know him and my mother well, and they have amazing relationships. I know my son Joey, I think he calls him twice a week just to talk to him, to get advice if he needs to, you know, he's his go-to person, you know. I lost my train of thought, sorry. What was the original question?
You did good.
I think I went off on a
No, what you've
Oh, right,
learned
his
from your
traits,
father that you wanna pass on.
And just the way he's always was there for me and still is. That's, you know, what I try to be for my kids, and hopefully they will do that for their kids. And they're now 14 and 20, so they're old enough to understand, and they really appreciate it. And they appreciate the time that they spend with my parents as well. You know,
What would you like your father's legacy to be?
his legacy.
What do you want him to be, you know, in 3 generations from now? What do you want him to be remembered as? When your grandchildren are talking about it.
Who he is his legacy. He's kind and loving and warm and always there for you no matter what, and brilliant and a hard worker, and just, you know, and modest about the whole thing. Very unassuming until you know him. And, you know, he's just a wonderful father and grandfather. And I hope to be as, you know, good a parent as he was and is to me, you know, for my kids and my grandchildren. Just very lucky. And I've always known I was lucky since I was little. I've always known I was very lucky with my parents.
Have you seen any change in him as a grandfather versus as a father?
It definitely softened him up a lot. When Zvi, the oldest, was born, he was such a cute little baby, and he melted everyone's hearts. And since then, you know, my father loves his grandchildren, and I think he would do anything for them. I mean, he sat through many, many Disney movies on his big screen TV for Lily when we used to visit. And when we had Joey's bar mitzvah in Winnipeg in February. Luckily, it was only minus 27 when they came in, so it wasn't so bad. And he just had a great time, and he was dancing with all the kids and with Lily's little friends in the circle, and it was so beautiful. Yeah.
Do they come here to visit at all? Or is it
Here in
like-
Toronto?
Yeah.
Not so much to Winnipeg. That's a real
No, it's
schlep.
here.
But yeah, when we moved here August 2018, and they came a couple months later for the weekend. My mother came a lot because I traveled to Winnipeg for work once a month. So when I first came, she was coming every month to watch Lily when I went, which is amazing. I don't know whose parents do that for them until Lily got old enough that she didn't have to do that anymore. And then until COVID hit, they came often here, and we went there. It was really great. And then recently they just came for Lily's graduation.
All right, so here's the question on everybody's mind. Is your father going to ever retire?
He's been saying forever that he's going to retire in 2 years, and then it changed, I'm going to retire when I'm 80. And now he's almost 80, so I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think if and when he retires, he'll still be busy. I know he told me he wants to learn, he wants to teach, so we'll see.
And what do you want to see for the next chapter of his life after, where work is not, you know, the number one thing in his life, taking up his time?
Yeah.
What do you want to see for him?
I just want him to be happy and healthy, and just enjoy every day with his, you know, family, with my mom, with myself and my brother, with the grandchildren, and just do things that make him happy and fulfilled. until 120 or Mashiach comes, whatever's first.
Great.
Yeah.
Any catchphrases of his? Anything that he says a lot?
Anytime you ask him something, the answer is sure. It's like that. Joey can do it better. That's a favorite. Whenever the kids, do you want to, Saba, can we do this? Saba, can we do this? Sure. He's a man of few words, unless he's telling a story. But I can't think of any other one. That's one that stands out.
Matthew,
That was great.
that was terrific.
Great.
Yes.
Was I talking too fast, or was I clear? I feel like I wasn't clear. No.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Working in plastics can be very challenging, especially positive outcomes can vary dramatically. And sometimes you're looking at something and you're going, I don't know how this is going to work out. Your father's faced that. How's his bedside manner when he's dealing with really tough situations and tough choices?
Good question. When you answer, look at me.
Oh, sorry.
No, you didn't do it wrong. Need a battery change? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna cut.
Got it?
I'm gonna peek.
Yeah. Matt, you wanna clap again?
Yep.
And I'm rolling.
Audio's rolling.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You can
No,
hold it. Don't worry.
Great.
Don't worry.
Okay.
All right, this is Nachman, Toronto. Iris, scene 3, take 2.
Okay, so the question on the table is about your father's, how does he deal with some of the difficult situations and deal with the patients that have some very difficult things to face?
It's a rare occurrence, but it can happen. But
Give it
he,
to me a little more in a full sentence so we understand what you're talking about.
okay,
It's a rare
dealing
occurrence.
dealing with a difficult patient with a difficult outcome in plastic surgery. It's rare for my father. He's pretty meticulous, but it can happen to any plastic surgeon, I suppose. And he's very, I think, very upfront and honest with the patient, and talks to them on openly about whatever the situation may be, which is, communication is the key with this type of situation. So when I worked with him, I learned that too. And I think he also had a little bit of a benefit that my mother was the office manager, and she is very knowledgeable. We used to joke that she knows just as much as him, if she just can't do the surgery. So I think the two of them together, can handle pretty much anything that came their way.
Good.
Yeah.
Is there anything on your paper that you
There's one thing that I mentioned when I graduated plastic surgery. It was from Montefiore, which is the same hospital my father did his residency at. And we were at the graduation ceremony, which is in the chief of the plastic surgery department at that time, his backyard, who took over the year after my father already graduated, but they knew each other professionally. And they both realized that it was exactly 30 years to the day that my father graduated when I graduated. And I was 1 year old, when he was in the same city, same place. It was, who knows, right? Who knows where?
It's good.
Yeah.
What would you say the best advice he's ever given you?
Oh gosh, I have to think for a second.
Take your time.
I don't know. It's just a lot of little things. I wasn't prepared for that question. Sorry. Let me think. I have to think about it.
Okay.
I'll come back to that one if I.
I think we're winding
Yeah.
down.
I've got
Another?
question. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich.
So working in Emerge especially, but in that kind of environment where the work you do has a massive impact, how did your father blow off steam? How did he decompress from those intense situations, and especially working long calls or working multiple offices? What did he do to decompress?
I never got the impression that he.
Look at me.
I never got the impression he needed to decompress. I think he loved what he was doing, and he is a workaholic by nature. His brain needs to be busy. He needs to be busy. So I think, but I know we played soccer on the weekends in the backyard. He loves his soccer. And just maybe spending time with the family. Yeah, I don't know. I never, when he came back, it wasn't like, oh, I'm exhausted. It was a long day. He never complained, never. Just, this is a great job, you know. And when I was thinking about what specialty to do, because originally I was thinking about doing general surgery, breast surgery, he's like, you should really think about plastic surgery. It's a great lifestyle. It's really interesting. It's never boring. You know, it's head to toe. You have to be able to deal with anything when you're doing plastic surgery. And so I did some electives and ended up realizing he was right as usual, and ended up applying for plastic surgery after 3 years of general surgery.
Good. I don't really have. I think you covered everything very, very well. So unless there's anything.
Did I say any kind of well wishes to my father for happy birthday, or I don't need to do that?
You can. I mean, you don't need to. You can tell me.
Did I say
I'd
anything?
rather you tell it to me in third person. I'd rather
Right.
you tell it to me in, you know, what your wishes are for him.
I guess I kind of said that before,
Yeah,
but
you could say it again.
yeah.
Don't forget, we're dicing this up. So
Yeah, I guess I just wish for him only the best in everything, and just want him to know how much I love him and appreciate everything he's, you know, done for me, been there for me my whole life, and I just want him to know how much he means to me and how lucky I am to have him, and that I know that. That's it. I'm going to start crying, so I'm going to stop.
it's okay.
Anything else?
That's it. We're good.
Okay. I
Let's
think
cut.
I know that I'm going to remember stuff after that I wish I mentioned.
So we'll fly